Welcome to this podcast on talking with moms who are returning to work. This podcast is part of a series of educational resources funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Service for use in the WIC program. Before I introduce our main speaker, my name is Suzanne Campbell. I'm an international board certified lactation consultant, and I've been involved with La Leche League and WIC with peer counselors for the last 20 years. Since we're talking about returning to work, I wanted to share with you a brief vision of myself 23 years ago with a 6-month-old at home, leaving for my first graduate course, using the old-fashioned cylinder hand pump in a handicapped stall at a restroom at the University of Rhode Island. If I had not had my supportive La Leche League leaders and friends who helped me recognize what I needed to do, I think I carried a picture of my child. I think I had a blanket that smelled like her, and I had to get my body to realize that even though there wasn't a baby there, I needed milk to flow or I would be incredibly in pain. So I think there's so much we can do to support mothers. It is possible to return to work, return to school, be separated from our infants, and still provide them the best in breast milk. So right now, I'd like to introduce Kathy Crothers with Every Mother Incorporated. We hope this podcast will help you in your journey with new mothers to help you feel better able to support moms who return to work after their baby is born.
Hello everyone, my name is Kathy Carruthers, and I want to welcome you to this podcast on talking with mothers who are returning to work. You know, the reality is many mothers today do go to work, even if they have small children or even brand new babies at home. In fact, data from the Department of Labor tells us over 70% of women of childbearing age are in the labor force today, and nearly 60% of them have young infants. In today's economy, the reality is many women must go to work to help support their families. Many of them are working in very difficult environments, maybe fast food restaurants or retail stores where they're on their feet and busy nonstop. So can you continue to breastfeed even at work? Of course you can. I think to begin talking about this, it's important to first talk to moms about their feelings about going to work. When I think back to my own experience, I did go back to work with the birth of my first child. I have 5 children today. And I will say for me, going back to work and trying to balance breastfeeding and work and all of my responsibilities was just about the hardest thing I ever had to do. Being away from my baby was very, very sad to me. I remember having pictures of him across my desk and crying for several days because I missed him so much. And I think some mothers share those feelings. But I also know some women maybe have different feelings. Some women might be very happy to be going back to work. They might be happy they're going to get a little break from the baby. And they're maybe looking forward to not having to be responsible for that baby 24/7. Other mothers might be feeling a little guilty for leaving their baby with someone else. Some mothers maybe are like me and mourn the loss of that close connection with their baby throughout the day. So your advice to moms is going to be very different depending on how that mother is feeling. So think back to your 3-step counseling principles, your open-ended questions, and your affirmation. What kinds of questions could you ask to find out what the mother's feelings are? Here's some questions you might want to think about. How are you feeling about going back to work? What worries you most about going to work with a new baby? You might even ask, what are some of your family members saying about you breastfeeding right now? Because she's probably getting a lot of advice from her family. And maybe, what's most important to you right now? And don't forget the power of affirmation when you hear her answers. You might say something like, I remember feeling that way too, if you did. Or maybe, I think a lot of mothers have worried about that. If she says she's really sad about being away from her baby, you might want to say, it must be hard to think about leaving your baby. Some of these kinds of statements can help her to feel that she's not so alone when she's making these important decisions. Now, why would it be good for moms to continue breastfeeding? Well, for one thing, we know babies receive important antibodies even if they are away from their mothers. A healthier baby means both mom and dad miss less work to care for a sick child. There are research studies that show that even dads miss less work when the baby is breastfed, because both moms and dads typically stay home with sick children. When a baby is healthier, that means lower health care costs for the family and lower health care costs that the company might be paying for if they're insured through their company. Expressing milk at work can help moms relax and feel more productive because those wonderful oxytocin hormones are running through their system. And it also helps them to feel a very special connection with their baby, like they're doing something very important that nobody else can do, even when they're not able to be right with their baby. And that can be very, very powerful for moms. Now, to make it work, moms are going to need some special support. So here are just a few tips that you might want to pass along to moms to help make it easier. First thing to remember is to encourage her to breastfeed exclusively during the first month, especially, and then throughout her entire maternity leave if possible. She might not be able to take a long maternity leave, but if she can breastfeed exclusively during that time, it will help her to build a strong foundation so she can make lots of milk when she goes back to work. Secondly, encourage her to talk to her supervisor before she goes back to work. In fact, pregnancy is a great time to have that first discussion. She can talk about the fact she's going to be breastfeeding and maybe what arrangements they're going to be able to make to help her provide a private area to express her milk, somewhere that isn't the handicap stall in the bathroom, the way Suzanne had to experience. Number 3, consider returning to work gradually. Sometimes moms find that when they go back to work part-time for just a little while before they go full-time, it gives her body and her baby a chance to adjust. And then finally, help her find places where she can express milk at work. You know, the space doesn't have to be large. It can be a space as small as 4 foot by 5 foot. It needs to be just big enough to put a chair in there and have something to set her pump on. Sometimes moms have used a little closet. Sometimes a building or a supervisor will find a little area like a closet or an unused space, and they'll fix it up to where it can be a nice place for a breastfeeding mom. But you don't have to have a room. If she's working in a small business, you might want to even suggest that she talk to her supervisor about using the supervisor's office if he has a door that can close and lock. Or maybe she has a colleague who wouldn't mind sharing his or her office with her. Also, I want to just encourage you to tell moms about the new national law that now requires employers to support their employees with breastfeeding. This is part of the Affordable Care Act, which was a health care reform law that was passed in April of 2010. And it requires employers to provide time and space that mothers are going to need. Now, it does say that the space cannot be a bathroom because we know bathrooms are not a very sanitary place to feed babies. In a recent study in New York, they found that most WIC mothers do not know about this law. And when they surveyed employers, they found the employers didn't know about the law either. And what they found was that when mothers knew that there was a law to protect them, they felt more empowered to speak up about their needs. So I encourage you to share with every mother you counsel about the law so she can feel that same empowerment. You also want to talk to the mother about getting her baby ready for that separation and to talk to the people who are going to be caring for her baby. Often child care providers or family members are really not sure what to do. They don't know how to take care of a breastfed baby, or maybe they worry that the baby will be more fussy since they cannot breastfeed. So you might want to just reassure her that babies usually do just fine. And if they're worried that the baby won't take a bottle very well, she can maybe start out by trying a few practice feedings of an ounce or so each day by bottle. And usually she doesn't need to start this till about 2 weeks before she returns to work. I often find that babies don't really want to take that bottle from mom. They know what mom is for, and they would prefer to just breastfeed when they're with a mom. So you might encourage her to let the dad or grandma or some other family member or friend to practice giving these little practice feedings to get the baby used to it. She can also have someone try when the baby is a little sleepy and not overly hungry. Babies who are hungry and mad, they're not interested in learning a new skill, so you might want to try that when the baby's not quite so hungry. You may also want to talk to her about finding childcare close to where she works. So maybe she can actually just go and breastfeed the baby during her lunch break or her evening break. Could a family member even bring her baby to her to breastfeed while she's at work? I know a teacher whose mom brought her baby to her during her lunch break every day. And although she found it kind of hard to pump during the rest of the day at school, she did enjoy getting to feel her baby close to her during that lunchtime feeding, and she nursed more when she was home with the baby after school. And don't forget to encourage moms to talk to the other people who live with her about support they can give her at home. I know a mom who told us that her husband was her support for her, and she said his job was to take care of her pumping bag. She said when she would come home from work, she would put the bag on the counter, and her husband would then pull out the pump. He would clean out the breast pump parts for her. He would replace the diapers, put in clean change of clothes for the baby, and get that diaper bag all ready to go for the next day. The next morning when she got ready to leave for work, he would pull some more milk out of the freezer, put it in the bag, and all she had to do was get herself ready, get her baby ready, and walk out the door. And I think that's a very supportive dad. So talk to your moms about things that families can do to support her. Now, I guess one of the most important things to keep in mind as you're talking to mothers is to remind them of things they can do to keep their milk production up. A lot of times mothers find that their milk production begins to decline when they go back to work. And here's a little secret that came to us from a lactation consultant named Nancy Moorbacher. She has a little process where she encourages moms to count the number of times their baby breastfeeds, typically every 24 hours. That number, she says, is her magic number. Now that magic number is going to be different from mother to mother. And so what she'll want to do is to either breastfeed or express her milk that number of times each day when she goes back to work. So if she is typically feeding her baby, say, 10 times every 24 hours, when she goes back to work, she needs to either be breastfeeding or breastfeeding and expressing milk a total of 10 times every 24 hours. And that will be what keeps her milk production high. Of course, the milk that she expresses can be stored in the refrigerator. It can be kept in a freezer for about 3 to 6 months, and that can then be given to the child care provider to give to her baby. You know, the good news is breastfeeding works. It works even for moms who are going to work or moms who are going to school. As a peer counselor, you can help moms feel confident and empowered to continue giving the baby their milk even when they have to be apart.